You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Hi everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. And on today's episode of the podcast, we're reviewing the second test between Australia and the West Indies from the Gabba. And what a test match we witnessed in this series between Australia and the West Indies. What a victory by the West Indies. Shamar Joseph, 7 wickets to bowl the West Indies to victory against all the odds. Many people didn't rate the West Indies going into this series. Many people thought they would get dominated by Australia in both test matches. Many thought they wouldn't win a test. But for them to win the way they did in this test match here at the Gabba, to beat Australia at the Gabba, which doesn't happen very often, was a remarkable achievement. Wonderful victory. Shamar bowled superbly. And this young, inexperienced team defied all the odds, proved the doubters wrong, and showed to all of us in the cricket community that the West Indies' future is bright, even though they've had some tough times over the last few years. But a wonderful victory, wonderful test match. Watching the test match myself, I enjoyed it thoroughly. A test match that went back and forth over the 4 days. One team was in front, the other team was behind, then came back, and then the other team came back. It was a wonderful test match. For Australia, they'll be disappointed, but they were a part of a great test match nonetheless. Steve Smith as opener in the run chase, 91 not out, nearly got Australia over the line. But for Steve Smith, he carried his bat, which is no mean feat for an opener. It's not easy to carry your bat as an opener. For him to do that for the first time in his opening career, which is not long into it, nearly got Australia over the line, nearly scored what would have been a very remarkable century in a remarkable test match. But at the end of the day, Australia weren't quite at their best in some departments in this test match, and the West Indies were a bit better. In fact, more than better. They were pretty good and did well to win this test match at the Gabba. So there's plenty to talk about, as always, when we talk about games and review matches on the podcast. There's plenty to talk about, offer my thoughts, how I saw the game, and where both teams did well and didn't do so well with the bat and with the ball, and talk about the match as a whole. So plenty to talk about, plenty to discuss, and let's get straight into it. And we'll start with the match summary from the match. This second test at the Gabba between Australia and the West Indies. Let's have a look at the match summary. And the West Indies batted first and made 311 from their first innings. Joshua De Silva, top scored with 79 and 4 wickets for Mitchell Starc. Australia, in reply to the West Indies' first innings, were 9 for 289 declared. Usman Khawaja top scored with 75. Azari Joseph took 4 wickets for the West Indies. The West Indies were bowled out for 193 in their second innings. Kurt McKenzie top scored with 41. Josh Hazlewood and Nathan Lyon took 3 wickets each for Australia. Australia was set a target of 216 by the West Indies. They were bowled out for 207. Steve Smith carried his bat as an opener. 91 not out, he top scored. And Shamar Joseph, what a spell of bowling, took 7 wickets to guide the West Indies to a famous victory by 8 runs. And the player of the match, no surprise, was Shamar Joseph for his 7 for 68 and his superb bowling performance. So that's the match summary. That's how the match ended up the way it did over the 4 days of this test match here at the Gabba. What were the key moments and the key factors from the second test between Australia and the West Indies? Well, there were a lot of key moments and key factors that decided this test match. Hodge and De Silva's partnership of 149, the 6-wicket, rescued the West Indies from 5 for 64 to post 311 in their first innings. That was a key moment, key partnership for the West Indies to try and post a competitive score. Important innings from Usman Khawaja, 75, Alex Carey, 65, and Pat Cummins, the captain, 64 not out, helped rescue Australia from 4 for 24 to post 9 for 289 declare, to trail by 22 runs on the first innings. Those innings and partnerships were crucial for Australia. At one stage, they were in trouble, probably looking like getting bowled out for under 100 at one stage. But all thanks to Khawaja, Carey, Cummins, those innings and those partnerships they put on together ensured Australia were only 22 runs behind the West Indies on the first innings. And then, last but not least, Shamar Joseph's spell, taking 7 for 68 was a key moment in this match. In terms of the West Indies bowling Australia out for 207, defending 216, which was always going to be a difficult proposition on a pitch that was pretty good to bat on still, which led the West Indies to a famous victory by 8 runs. And those were the key moments and key factors from the second test between Australia and the West Indies from the Gabba. Let's talk about how both Australia and the West Indies went about their business in this second test at the Gabba. Talk about their performances with both bat and ball. As always, we'll start with the home side and we'll start with Australia. Let's talk about their performance with the bat, first of all, and talk about how the Australian batters went about their business in this second test against the West Indies here in Brisbane. Smith, 6 and 91 not out. Khawaja, 75 and 10. Labuschagne, 3 and 5. Green, 8 and 42. Head, 0 and 0. Mitchell Marsh, 21 and 10. Carey, 65 and 2. And that's how the Australian batters went about their business in this second test between them and the West Indies here in Brisbane. Well, in the first innings, Australia in a bit of trouble at 4 for 24, but key innings and partnerships from Khawaja, Carey and Cummins ensured Australia got to 9 for 289 declared, trailing by 22 runs on first innings. There were pretty key partnerships there. Australia were in a bit of bother, as I mentioned, but, key innings from Labuschagne, from Khawaja, I should say, 75, 65 for Carey, 64 for Cummins, not out. Without those innings, Australia would have been in a whole heap of trouble. They added some good partnerships as well. Khawaja and Cummins added 81 for the 8th wicket, and then Carey and Khawaja added 96 for the 6th wicket. And those two partnerships were very crucial for Australia in terms of getting within touching distance of the West Indies on the first innings. So it was only 22 runs at the end, and then Pat Cummins decided to declare to get some wickets in the nighttime period with the ball. And that's why Australia declared when they did. In the second innings, the run chase, 216. Everyone thought that should have been a doddle for Australia. But as we know in Test match cricket, when you're chasing any low target like 216 in the fourth innings, it's not going to be easy. And that proved to be the case. Australia were bowled out for 207. All thanks to Shamar Joseph's wonderful spell of bowling, taking 7 wickets. And Australia were absolutely blown away by him. Steve Smith did very well to carry his bat as a test match opener, 91 not out. And he nearly got Australia over the line, but no one could stick with him. That was the problem. And Australia were bowled out for 207. So that's how Australia performed across the 2 innings with the bat. It was quite a very poor batting performance by Australia in this test match. They weren't quite at their best. That's been the case this summer. The top order's been scratchy. Some of them have been scratchy. Poor decision-making, poor execution of shots, and just not doing the basics well enough with the bat did cost them in this test match at times. Another word I could describe the batting was pretty dumb batting, and it was dumb batting at times. Some of the shots that were played and some of the wickets that the West Indies got, in the second innings, the West Indies, Shamar Joseph's bowling, a lot of those deliveries were good deliveries. But in the first innings, some of the dismissals by the Australian batters weren't really good balls, and the Australian batters gave away their wickets. In particular, Travis Head getting caught down the leg side first ball. Not a good shot to be playing from Travis Head. Down the leg side from, I think it was Kemar Roach. Yes, it was Kemar Roach who got him out. Down the leg side, and he wafted at it. First ball he came in when Australia were in trouble. 3 down for 24 when he came in, and soon 4 for 24, and played that shot down the leg side and got caught. That was a dumb shot. Anything down the leg side, leave it. Even Kemar Roach would say that wasn't the greatest delivery I ever bowled, but I got a wicket because Travis Head didn't quite, play the right shot. Well, he shouldn't have played it. Down the leg side, should leave it, really, is what I'm trying to say. Then Cameron Green chipped one straight to mid-off. And, just an example of the poor shots and dumb batting and decision-making that Australia made with the bat in this test match. Even in the run chase, Mitchell Starc in particular, played a pull shot that he missed time, got a top edge and got out caught. He was 21 off 14. Australia were 6-7 down at that stage of the run chase. That partnership between Starc and Smith, they added 35 for the 7th wicket. And then Mitchell Starc plays a dumb pull shot, which he didn't time at all, and got out caught by Greaves off Shamar Joseph. That partnership was putting pressure back on the West Indies. He was putting pressure back on the West Indies at that time, Mitchell Starc, and just relieving some of the pressure from Steve Smith. And then he plays that shot and gets out. So that's very frustrating, and that's an example of not very good batting at all from Australia. And in the run chase, they were outdone by Shamar Joseph, purely based because of his raw pace, the adrenaline, the high of the situation. He felt like he could conquer everything, Shamar Joseph, and he just ran through them. And the Australian batters didn't have any answers for them, really. So Australia, that's been the case this summer. Poor shot selection, not doing the basics well enough. And that's been the problem for Australia throughout this whole entire summer. Not only this series against the West Indies, but the same against Pakistan when they were here early on in the summer. So that's something that they need to work on going forward. Let's talk about Steve Smith. Steve Smith opening the batting. A lot of debate about him opening the batting. I thought he did well, actually, in the run chase. 91 not out, carried his bat, which is no easy feat. There's only a few Australian batters in the history of Test cricket that have done that. And Steve Smith joins that list following his innings here at the Gabba. Obviously, for him, no one could stick around with him. And he was left to pretty much do it on his own, but he couldn't get Australia over the line. I thought he batted well. There was a difference about Steve Smith in this second innings compared to the first innings. He got out to Kemar Roach, LBW, trapped in front, moved far too across his stumps and got trapped in front, plumb LBW. But in the second innings, he had that look in his eye, Steve Smith. He was determined, especially when Australia lost those wickets when Shamar was getting going. He took 5 wickets in that first session and Australia were on the edge. You could see a change in Steve Smith's mindset. He was like, right, okay, I got to hunker down. I got to anchor the innings. Got to get us home if I can. It was a different Steve Smith. He looked a little bit freer. He looked a bit more aggressive. He looked really assured at the crease. Probably the best he's batted all this summer, really. And it showed. So for him, this was an important knock for him as the new opener to gain confidence and reassurance that he can do this at this level. Now, we've got to remember it's only been a few innings since he's been opener. Obviously, he'll get another run in New Zealand, which is not far away for Australia. It's on the horizon, that test tour of New Zealand, which is next month in February. But for him to get this 91 not out is a testament to him as a player to get better and look to do a job that he wants to do. So I thought he batted really well. Nearly got Australia over the line. It would have been a very good 100 if he did. But unfortunately, as I go back to what I said before, Shamar Joseph stood in the way of that, and the Australian batters couldn't cope with that extra pace and got blown out. And as soon as the tail end came in with Steve Smith, they weren't going to last long to Shamar Joseph, and that proved to be the case. Someone who's bowling 140 plus, as a tail ender, it's very hard to keep that out, isn't it? So that's why they faltered the way they did, Australia. So I thought Smith batted well. It will keep the debate about him as an opener going, even though he scored this score of 91 not out. But if there's one guy who can do the job, it's Steve Smith, and he looked pretty good, and who knows? He may succeed at this role as opener, but only time will tell. Cameron Green, let's talk about him. Struggled again, Cameron Green, in the second innings in particular. Had to really grind it out. Looked ugly. And to be quite honest, it was quite painful to watch, actually. For some reason, I got that feeling when watching Cameron Green batting. It was quite painful to watch, playing and missing, not really looking assured, down on confidence. He's batting at number 4, which is a new position for him in this Australian Test side with the rejig batting order. But it was good that he fought through that and got a score. It's 42. Yes, it's not a big score, but at least it's something to try and get him motoring and start to get that fluency back at the crease. But he looked pretty good. Once he got through those tough periods, he played some good shots, and then he struggled again, a bit of a battle with himself. So let's hope Cameron Green can overcome that because there's a lot of pressure on him at the moment, which is unnecessary pressure, really. People, the media and all that stuff are not really helping Cameron Green at the moment. He feels like he needs to go out there and do some wonderful things. Well, he's a young player. He's still learning. He's still finding his way, his tempo in Test match cricket when it comes to batting, right? He hasn't quite reached the stage where Travis Head and Mitchell Marsh have reached in terms of that clarity of thought and having a clear mind and not thinking about the outcome. Whereas with Cameron Green, he's a young player. A lot of people build him up, the media in particular, which doesn't help, even his own teammates, which doesn't help either, saying he could be the next Jack Cullis or something like this. Well, he's not going to be the next Jack Cullis. He's going to be the next Cameron Green. Let him be Cameron Green. Don't put this external pressure on him. And I think that's the problem that Green is facing at the moment, this external pressure, the expectations to do well. He's got the talent, he's got the attributes, but it's all that external pressure that's weighing on his shoulders. So he's got to try and find a way through that. But I thought when he batted with Smith, that partnership of 71 for the third wicket in the run chase, he battled through that tough period. He got through it, and then he got a good ball from Shamar, which clean bowled him. I think it came off his arm and then back onto the stumps, just came back in to him. Nothing he could have done there. It was a good delivery. So Cameron Green struggled again at number 4. There'll be a lot of talk about him going forward, but hopefully this experience that he's had here at the Gabba, hopefully that will put him in good stead to get some runs if he can. We want to see him do well. He had a pretty good test with the ball as well. Took a wicket and it looked pretty good pace and bounce. Let's hope he can score some runs going into the future. Let's talk about Khawaja and Carey. Usman Khawaja, Alex Carey batted really well. Khawaja, no wonder he was named ICC Test Player of the Year. Batted really well, 75 in the first innings. Very crucial innings when Australia were in trouble. Needed to get the innings back on track. He certainly did that with Alex Carey, who batted really well. Good to see Carey back into the runs. He struggled going into this summer with his batting form, but good to see him score a quick fire 65 for 49. Looked really good, Carey. I think when Alex Carey's looking to score, being aggressive, excuse me, when he's looking to score, being aggressive, he's a much better player, Carey. And we saw that. A counter-attacking knock put the pressure back on the West Indian bowlers. And the West Indies had Australia 4 down for 24. Golden opportunity to have a big lead on the first innings. But all thanks to Khawaja, Carey, and even some very good runs from Pat Cummins, 64 not out from the skipper, really helped Australia to get back on nearly a level pegging when it came to the first innings difference. Pat Cummins, let's talk about him. First half century since 2018-19 against India in that test match in Melbourne. That was his last half century. 64 not out. He had to battle hard through some very good short pitch bowling from Azari Joseph in particular. But he got through that. It wasn't pretty, but he got through that and he was able to score runs once the ball got softer on a very good pitch. And good to see the skipper continue on his very good vein of form, because he's been bowling well. He's been batting well. His batting is starting to come back, and he's doing it again, the skipper, and he certainly did it in the first innings here with the bat when the team needed it. So very good to see that from Cummins in particular. Labuschagne and Travis Head struggled. Mitchell Marsh as well. Not really at their fluent best this summer, especially in this test match. They struggled. All of them struggled. Travis Head got out for a king pair. 2 first bowlers, which is not what you want as a test match batter. In the first innings, we talked about that poor shot that he played down the leg side. But in the second innings, he got a very cracking delivery from Shamar Joseph, which was an absolute ripping Yorker on off stump, base of off stump. Nothing he could have done there. Mitchell Marsh didn't really look at his best in this test match. Labuschagne was poor, got out, caught behind in both innings, square it up. He's got out in similar fashions this summer, and that's a concern for Marnus Labuschagne going forward. He needs to address that quickly. So to wrap up about Australia's batting, lots of work to do, plenty of cracks exposed, and they've got a lot of work to do going into the series against New Zealand, which is the next test series next month. Certainly the batting group have got a lot of questions to ask themselves. So in this test match, the batting, if I can describe it overall, was poor, dumb batting at times, not smart cricket, not smart batting, not doing the basics well enough. And that really showed in this test match. Let's talk about the bowlers and how the Australian bowlers went about their business in this test match against the West Indies here at the Gabba. No wickets for Labuschagne, a wicket for Green, no wickets for Head, no wickets for Marsh. 5 wickets for Stark, 1 wicket for Cummins, 5 wickets for Lyon, and 5 wickets for Hazlewood. And that's how the Australian bowlers went about their business in this test match. Well, they did well, the Australian bowlers, in very oppressive heat, humidity, very excruciating conditions at the Gabba. To bowl the West Indies out for 311 in the first innings after losing the toss was a good result. Had them 5 for 64 and in trouble. The Australian bowlers to the West Indian batting lineup. But unfortunately for the West Indies, they had a good partnership between Hodge and De Silva, 149 for the 6th wicket. The tail end contributed as well for the West Indies, and they were able to post that score of 311. Australia found it tough to try and break the West Indian tail again. That's been a problem this summer for the Australian bowlers, not wrapping up the tail end quickly. In the second innings, they did well to bowl the West Indies out for 193. The West Indies set Australia 216 runs to win. So that was a pretty good result for Australia on what was a very flat pitch. The ball got soft. The pink ball in this day-night test got very soft. And then batting became easier. But you expect this world-class attack to take wickets, and they did well to take 20 wickets in this test match. So they bowled well, once again, the Australian bowlers, as I said, in difficult conditions at the Gabba. Flat pitch, pink ball got soft, very hot, humid. So Australia's bowling was pretty good, as I mentioned. The fielding was a bit sloppy. There was a few drop catches from Steve Smith, few misfields from the Australian fielders. So Australia's fielding wasn't really on song in this test match. A couple of drop catches from Smith and poor fielding, ground fielding, fumbles and all that stuff was a noticeable observation to make about Australia's fielding. Josh Hazlewood bowled pretty well in this test, having a very good summer. I think he'll be very pleased with how he bowled in this test match. Very good again, very economical. Mitchell Stark was good in the first innings, and then in the second innings struggled a bit, probably because of the heat and humidity and the fatigue. And Nathan Lyon bowled well on a pitch that didn't really offer much spin for him. And Pat Cummins didn't really have an effective test match with the balls, more so with the bat. But, he was able to bowl some good overs here and there to put the pressure on the West Indian attack. So that's pretty much Australia's bowling, really. Yet again, pretty good in what was very trying conditions. Also, the biggest question that many people would be asking is Pat Cummins' declaration in terms of declaring when Australia were only 22 runs behind the West Indies. Australia declared at 9 for 289. 22 runs behind the West Indies on first innings. Was that the right call? Well, I suppose, as a captain, you've got to make these decisions. And, that's one that's been spoken about since Australia lost this test. I wouldn't say that was the reason Australia lost the test match. I would say they lost the test match because of Shamar Joseph's bowling, really. That's where they lost it, in the run chase, and couldn't handle that. It wouldn't have made any difference, really. Look, when the 9th wicket fell, Josh Hazlewood would have come out. He would have probably got out next ball anyway. You never know. So it wouldn't have made any difference anyway, I don't think. The reason that Cummins did what he did and declared was to use the pink ball under lights, because that's the best time to bowl with the pink ball in the day-night test. Under the floodlights, it will swing around and do a bit. Unfortunately, didn't quite work out for Australia. They only took 1 wicket, and that was the wicket of Chanderpaul. They would have liked a few more wickets to justify that decision, but I can understand fully why Pat Cummins did that decision. But I think people are making a big deal out of it. It wouldn't have made any difference anyway. If Josh Hazlewood came out to bat, he probably would have got out first ball for a golden duck. So looking at that in hindsight and in that perspective, I don't think it would have made any difference, really. Australia probably still would have been trailing anyway. So that was my observation from that with Pat Cummins in terms of his decision to declare. But anyway, to finish up about Australia's bowling, yet again, as you would expect from a world-class attack, did pretty well. Found it a bit difficult. The West Indies offered a lot of resistance and fight with the bat. The pitch was quite flat, good for batting. The ball got soft, the pink ball, as I mentioned. Very hot, humid conditions, but they did well to take 20 wickets in those conditions. So not easy for the bowlers from both sides, but for the Australian bowlers, I think they'll be very happy with their efforts in this test match. So that's Australia, and that's how Australia performed across this test match with the bat and ball. They'll be disappointed about this defeat, but plenty of areas to work on, and they'll move on and learn from this going forward into the future. Let's talk about the West Indies and their performance in this second test with bat and ball. And let's start with the West Indian batters and talk about their performance in this second test match against Australia from the Gabba. Braithwaite, 4 and 16. Chanderpaul, 21 and 4. McKenzie, 21 and 41. Afanase, 8 and 35. Hodge, 71 and 29. Greaves, 6 and 33. De Silva, 79 and 7. And Sinclair, 50. And that's how the West Indian batters performed in this test match. Did well to post 311 in their first innings, the West Indies. They were 5 for 64, in a bit of trouble, but then a brilliant partnership between Hodge and De Silva. They added 149 for the 6th wicket to rescue the West Indies to post a very good score of 311. It was something to bowl at. You would probably say it wasn't enough on a flat pitch, as we saw here at the Gabba, but it was something for the West Indies to work with. From where they were at 5 for 64, they would have taken that after winning the toss and batting first. In the second innings, they found it a bit difficult. They had to really grind out their runs in the second innings. They were bowled out for 193 eventually, but they set Australia 216 runs to win. It was some sort of a target. Many people thought it wasn't enough, but as we know now, it was enough because they won by 8 runs. But when they got to that target at the time, they thought maybe we were under a bit here with the target that we set Australia. But anyway, it was a good target, 216 at the end. They were able to get the job done. They found it tough, but they found a way through that to post a target of 216, over 200 at least, to give them a chance. And in the end, they were able to get the job done, as we know. So that's how they performed across the 2 innings with the bat. As I said, the West Indies showed a lot of good fight application at this test match. Yes, some of the batters struggled with their techniques and they got found out again from the Australian bowlers. But despite that, they showed a lot of good fight at application. They faced a lot of deliveries. They were able to put the Australian bowlers under some pressure a little bit. It was very hot, humid. The Australian bowlers were getting tired, and the West Indian batters were able to cash in when they did. I thought Hodge played very well. His partnership with De Silva, those two played really well. Kevin Sinclair on debut performed very well. Scoring 50 on debut was a pretty good effort. And they showed a lot of fight and character with the bat. Inexperienced, but this experience will do them the world of good. As an inexperienced batting lineup, this experience will put them in good stead. And we saw some good signs from them. They've got some good, talented batters. We've seen that with Hodge, De Silva, McKenzie, and even Afanase as well. They've got some very good players that have got a lot of skill and talent. And we saw that a bit in this test match. Unfortunately, for some of the batters, they'll be disappointed in the way they got out. So they'll be definitely learning from this experience. But it's quite an inexperienced batting lineup. It will take some time for them to gel and click and get the hang of test match cricket. But some really good signs from the West Indian batters there. And I thought they batted a lot better than the Australian batters, I would say. And they did, because they put a high price on their wicket and they grinded it out, whereas the Australian batters didn't quite do that for long periods of time in this test match. So plenty to work with the West Indian batting going forward in this test side for them, but some very good signs. And I think they'll be pleased to see that certain players performed well in Hodge and De Silva, and some good signs from McKenzie and Afanase in the second innings to justify that this young West Indian batting lineup can definitely have success going into the future and beyond. So to finish up about the West Indian batting, pretty good. Some areas to work on, but with a young, inexperienced team, you're going to get those problems, and you got to try and fix those. But they'll definitely fix that, and there's a lot of good signs going forward for them with the bat. Let's talk about the West Indian bowling lineup and their performance in this second test against Australia. A wicket for Greaves, a wicket for Sinclair, 6 wickets for Joseph, 3 wickets for Roach, and for Shamar Joseph, 8 wickets for the match. And that's how the West Indian bowlers performed in this second test against Australia at the Gabba. Did well, the West Indies, to keep Australia 9 for 289 declared in their first innings, which gave the West Indies a 22-run lead. They had Australia 4 for 24 at one stage, and I thought that was a real opportunity for the West Indian bowling attack to really seize that opportunity in that key moment. You have Australia 4 down for 24. You could bowl them out for under 100 or even just over 100, get a lead of maybe over 100 or more. And that would have put the West Indies in a very strong dominant position. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Khawaja, Carey, Cummins played the way they played. They put on some good partnerships. They put pressure back on this young West Indian bowling attack. And the West Indies sort of lost their way after that when bowling to Australia. But they were able to keep them to 289 for 9 declared when Pat Cummins declared when he did. So a 22-run lead on the first innings was not a bad result in the end. In the second innings, defending 216 on a pitch that was still pretty good here at the Gabba in this day-night test. A lot of people thought that wasn't going to be enough. People thought Australia were just going to chase them down easily. But enter Shamar Joseph, and what he does is take 7 wickets, and the West Indies win in a very memorable test match. So that's how the West Indian bowlers performed across the 2 innings, and that's how they went about their business. They bowled pretty well, the West Indian bowling attack. Look, it's a pretty good attack. They've got some good bowlers. You've got Kemar Roach, the veteran. You've got Azari Joseph, who can bowl fast. We'll talk about Shamar Joseph in a moment and what he did. Justin Greaves, he struggled at times with the ball, Greaves, but then he bowled really good spells, and then he didn't bowl so well. And Sinclair on debut, the spinner, he struggled a bit. And that's to be expected for a spinner on debut. He went for some tap in the first innings, but the experience would do him good. But there's only one person we should talk about when it comes to the bowling performance, and that's Shamar Joseph. What an effort. What a performance. 7 for 68 in 11.5 overs. The story that he has coming from a poor background in Guyana, in a small village where there's nothing much there. in terms of resources to play cricket, or let alone do anything else that we take for granted in life. His story is quite remarkable. Gave up his job as a security guard to play cricket for the West Indies. And here he is, taking 7 wickets, and the West Indies win a memorable test match. You cannot feel happy for him. And generally, I think a lot of people watching would feel generally happy for him. And his life has significantly changed forever, and for the better. You know, people will always stop him if he's walking down the street or they see him. They will always mention about this moment and this performance here at the Gabba. And his life has changed forever. And you want to see good things happen to good people. And he's certainly one of them, Shamar. I think he speaks very well. He's quite mature for a very young player. He speaks very humbly, if that's a word. He's very humble. He's grateful that he's got the opportunity to play Test cricket for the West Indies. He speaks highly about representing the West Indies in Test match cricket. He wants to put that first rather than the T20 franchise leagues, which I think will warm the cockles of many people's hearts in the West Indies, and many people who love Test match cricket around the world, regardless if you support the West Indies or not. So he speaks very maturely for his age. And, you know, he's just a great guy. And the West Indies have found someone in Shamar Joseph. They really have. They really have. You know, a very talented player. You know, despite his bowling performance and efforts, he's a very good batter as well. He scored some handy runs in the first test in Adelaide. So he could be a bowling all-rounder. You never know. You know, I won't be surprised if he scores a big score in his career. If he scores a couple of 50s or something like that. You know, he's got the capability of doing that. But going back to his bowling performance here, single-handedly bowled the West Indies to victory off his back. And he did. 7 wickets. It is a remarkable achievement. You know, to think about it, the day before, he was batting, facing Mitchell Starc, who bowled an absolute cracking Yorker to him. Blew off his front toe. It looked pretty bad. Everyone thought he had a broken toe. He went off for scans, which came back clear. Thank goodness for the West Indies that they came back clear. If it was a broken toe, then the West Indies would have been under pressure. They would have had one less bowler to try and take the 10 wickets to win this match. But in saying that, Shamar Joseph wasn't a broken toe, only some bruising and quite painful. You could see that he was hobbling when he was bowling that long spell non-stop. But he battled through that pain. It was just purely based on adrenaline. And once he got 1 wicket, he got 2, then he got 3, then he got 4, then he got 5, then he got 6, and then he got the 7th wicket. And you could see the celebration when he ran off the field to celebrate with the guys off the field for the West Indies dugout. And all the West Indies players followed him as well in the celebration. It was a wonderful moment. And it's, you know, you want to see that. And we certainly saw that from Shamar Joseph. He plays the game in the right spirit. He's competitive. He's a fighter. And he's just a good cricketer. You know, they've really unearthed a serious talent here. And, you know, for him, maybe he should have a bruised toe every test match he plays, because if he has some sort of injury, I should say, or some sort of discomfort, he tends to bowl better. So maybe that's the secret with Shamar. But in all seriousness, you know, it was a great performance, 7 wickets. And, you know, for him to do that was an outstanding performance. And the other bowlers supported him well. You know, Roach, Azari Joseph, Greaves in the second innings supported him and kept pressure from one end, whereas he was taking wickets from the other end. And he bowls good pace, 140 plus, you know, and that's a real asset to have in a team, to have a bowler who can do that. So, yeah, I think for the West Indies, they'll be very pleased with how he's going in his test career. Only his 2nd test match, but what a series he's had. And what a spell non-stop. And I think he said, you know, I'm not going to stop bowling until we take the last wicket. Well, he certainly did that. He bowled 12 overs nearly straight from one end. and he took 7 wickets, and he kept his word, and he delivered, and he bowled the West Indies to victory. So it was a wonderful, wonderful performance from Shamar. I think we've run out of superlatives to describe his performance, because it's probably one of the best performances we'll ever see from a West Indian bowler in Test match cricket. There's certainly been great performances, obviously, with the great bowlers that the West Indies have had over their history. But this one has to rate up there as one of the best. 7 wickets, can't get any better than that. So for Shamar, match winner, and for the West Indies as a bowling unit in general, they bowled pretty well, and they really troubled Australia at times in this Test match. And I think they'll be very pleased with a young attack that they were able to do that up against an Australian team that has a pretty good batting lineup. So for the West Indies, they're bowling pretty good in this Test match, I thought. A lot of good signs to look forward to going into the future. And for the West Indies overall in this Test match, and their performance with bat and ball was pretty good. It was a fighting, gritty performance, but they got the job done, and they were able to win what was a memorable Test match. So that's the West Indies in terms of their performance in this second Test with bat and ball against Australia here at the Gabba. My final thoughts and concluding thoughts from our review of this second Test between Australia and the West Indies. As I said earlier at the start of this episode, it was a thrilling Test match from start to finish. You know, one side was in front, the other side was behind, then came back. And that's the wonderful thing about Test match cricket, is the pendulum effect, is that you never know who's in front in a Test match. It always swings back and forth over the 5 days. In this case, it was 4 days in this Test match, but that's the beauty of Test match cricket, and that's what it can do. The West Indies getting over the line in a memorable Test match is a remarkable achievement, a remarkable feat. This performance, Shamar Joseph taking 7 wickets to bowl the West Indies to victory, you can see what it meant to the West Indian team. This young, inexperienced team were written off, basically. No one gave them a chance. And for them to pull out this victory the way they did is quite remarkable. And even seeing the former players of the West Indies who were a part of the golden era, the likes of Ian Bishop, the likes of Carl Hooper, Brian Lara, getting emotional, teary, you could see what it meant to them as well. And this win means so much for the people of the Caribbean. We have a few listeners who support the West Indies who listen to our podcast. I'm sure you will be celebrating very, very hard and enjoying what was a wonderful achievement by this young West Indian team. And you should be proud. And no doubt people of the Caribbean will be proud of this team and what they have achieved, a sort of David and Goliath sort of situation. And Australia were toppled by the West Indies at the Gabba, which is not an easy thing to do for visiting sides, to come here to the Gabba and win. India did it a couple of years ago in that famous match with Rishabh Pant, and now the West Indies, which is a remarkable achievement. But, we saw in this Test match some great performances with bat and ball. Obviously, Shamar Joseph, Steve Smith, nearly getting Australia over the line, 91 not out, carried his bat. It would have been a memorable century if he got the job done. So it was a wonderful Test match from start to finish, and I thoroughly enjoyed it from start to finish. But this victory from the West Indies is what Test cricket needed. On a serious note, if we can get a bit serious here for a little bit, this victory is what Test cricket needed to have. It needed the West Indies to win in this fashion. It needed this because the West Indies have been struggling for some time. And for them to win in this fashion will definitely rejuvenate, will inspire people of the Caribbean to get behind the team and support Test match cricket in general, but also the West Indies as well. And it also reiterates that as a cricket community, we need to do all we can to support nations and teams like the West Indies and other nations who may be struggling, where Test cricket is not doing so well. We need to support them. And this victory by the West Indies has reiterated that. If you put the time and effort and you fund these teams and nations, this is the outcome that you will get. You will get this sort of outcome, as we saw with the West Indies in this victory here at the Gabba. That's why we need to do more. And hopefully we do, and hopefully the ICC do more, because when it's gone, it's gone. You know, Test cricket, talk about its future. When it's gone, it's gone. And you can't get it back when it's gone. So you need to do what you can now to try and make sure that it stays here. But I think everyone would agree that this was a great victory by the West Indies. And I think everyone is so happy for them. This young, inexperienced team to do what they did is a remarkable achievement. And I couldn't be happier for them. And I think many people feel the same as well. Couldn't be happier for them. It's a great win. They've got a lot of talent. The future is bright in the Caribbean. And let's hope this Test team can continue on this upward direction. This will definitely give them a boost of confidence going well into the future. And, let's rally all around the West Indies. Let's get behind them and support them. Well, thanks everyone for listening to our second Test review between Australia and the West Indies. If you're watching or listening to this episode of the podcast on our YouTube channel, let us know your thoughts on this second Test between Australia and the West Indies in the comments. We would love to hear what you have to say. Thanks for watching and listening. Until next time, keep safe and bye for now.